认识卢卡吉亚是在曼大的社团展会上，那时他正在为一个叫 Muslim Northern Women 的社团招新。我在本科期间选修了不少和中东相关的课程，对伊斯兰文化有着一种天然的好奇，很自然地凑了上去。在排队咨询的穆斯林当中，我是唯一一个来自中国的局外人，他也由此注意到了我，送给我一本书叫《Innocent Until Proven Muslim》。他们希望能让外部世界消除所谓的伊斯兰恐惧，抛开刻板印象，去了解头巾下一个个活生生的人。之后每次见面，我们的交流总是不会短于3个小时，从学习到就业，从性别到家庭，从哲学到宗教，似乎什么都可以聊。我从来没想过会和一个来自叙利亚的穆斯林女孩保持这样的默契。我们流淌着不同的血脉，成长于全然不同的文化环境，却总是有着相同的感受。我问她，为什么在我每次因为语言障碍而停顿时，总能精确地猜到话的后半截？她说 Because we are both humans。 这也是我第一次意识到，秉持着人类最基本的同理心，或许真的可以跨越种族和文化的障碍，去理解对方的想法。作为社会科学领域的学生，我们鲜少称自己为女权主义者。以西方白人为核心的女性主义，在应用到强调集体观念和人际关系的亚洲社会时，似乎出现了严重的水土不服。不仅在社会面上没有达成真正的共识，在女性的内部也出现了许多分化。而我们即便作为深受高等教育，有时能力实现经济独立的女性，却也并没有在这个阵营中感受到归属感，反而觉得被新的刻板印象和社会期待所规训了。一定是哪错了？女性一定要以成为男性为荣吗？女性可以选择做个普通人吗？人格独立和对爱的渴望可以共存吗？对于这些问题，我们想给出不同的答案。
It's like the whole idea of feminism is to empower women and to give women more freedom, but sometimes that traps women because these organizations try to make a woman more like a man, which is just oppressing the woman all over again. Whereas what it should really be about is allowing the woman to make a choice about how she wants to live her life, and also making sure that that choice actually exists and is provided for that woman. Because sometimes we just say women should have a choice, but then in a lot of situations, women don't have an actual choice. Like they only have one choice because no other possibility is open for them, unfortunately. Yeah, and I think it's not really, like, if you look at like the theoretical like feminist ideology, they basically blame men for everything. And I don't think that's fair. Like, I think it's more complicated than that.
I agree.
It's too easy and simple to just blame men for everything. You know what I mean? Like,
From every dimension.
And kind of like we mentioned last week as well, feminism emerged from white, rich women wanting to have the same rights as men. And they never cared about women like us from like a completely different culture, completely different religion, women who are not as rich and powerful in society. So it's adapting, and it's no longer just about white women. But the reality is that there is a racist hierarchy within the feminism movement, and it's white, rich women at the top. And then people like you and me who are
from Asia.
Asia and different races, and like black women especially are like right at the bottom. Nobody's going to convince me that like feminism was about giving a person like me or a person like you the same rights as a man. Like I said, like I really support women, but I think in a very different way. So in Islam, the man and the woman are equal in the eyes of God. So we believe that like when we die, there will be like a day of judgment. So God will judge each person for what they've done in this life. The man and the woman are going to be equal, like you're not going to be discriminated against by God. But we also believe that it's basically wrong for women to try and be more like a man, because like we were clearly created to look different and for slightly different purposes. So like a woman is able to give birth, for example. A man is not, but then a man is physically stronger than a woman. A woman is more emotionally intelligent. So there is slight differences that are there for a reason. That's what we believe. And that's because we have slightly different purposes. But it doesn't mean we're not equal in the eyes of God, if that makes sense.
Yes, that makes sense.
So it's kind of ridiculous and like impractical to try and make a woman into a man, or like to make a woman be more like a man. That's the other thing. Like, we believe that instead of a woman trying to just do everything to be more like a man, a Muslim woman should be thinking about being more in line with the way God created her. So kind of like you said last week, like you were trying to be less emotional, even though you know that deep down, like, you express emotion easily, and like I'm the same. And I used to also think that that was like a bad thing because men don't really show emotion as much as we do, generally speaking. And I thought that the correct way to be was to just, you know, keep everything inside and don't like express everything as much. And like I cry very easily, so I used to like stop myself from doing that, and it actually caused so much more damage for me. But
And
now,
it's not you.
yeah, it's not me, exactly. I felt like I was trying to be something that I'm not. It just feels miserable, like it's not worth it. I think like once I started to learn more about my religion, and I started to understand that God has created me this way as a woman, and I have special talents and purposes that a man doesn't have, and I need to embrace that, because it's obviously been done for a reason. So that's kind of what allowed me to see a world beyond like the feminism ideology. And I think more women are starting to see that like the real way to support and empower women is just to give them the choice to decide how they want to be. That's what it's about.
I think compared with being a man, it's more important to recognize the differences and then accept it and try to make good use of it. Yeah. And when you talk about pursue every right as what the men do, which will let me think about what freedom it is. I think in the meantime that you pursue the same right as men, you also need to take the same responsibility as them. So maybe it create more problem than we considered before. Yeah, I still remember that I do a housing research on my grade 4 in the undergraduate period. I want to research on the mid-class youth in Shenzhen to see what's their housing concept. Do they still pay a lot of attention on buying a house? And at that time, I see a very big gender differences. When I ask girls, their reaction is like, I want to buy a house, but it's not really necessary for me because in China, social norm is not really necessary for girls to buy a house and then get married. Seems like it's the responsibility of a man. And when it comes to boy, they say, I have to buy a house, although I know the housing price is very unreasonable nowadays, but I have to buy that or I cannot get married. Yeah, that's the gender differences. Sometimes for normal people, if you cannot change the world, what you can do is to take advantage of these differences. Maybe you will feel a little bit comfortable if you are a woman, because you don't need to take the responsibility of buying a house. That's also fine. I'm not saying it's wrong or right. I'm saying that, yeah, you have the ability to not do that. Yeah, so we don't need to eliminate all the differences. We don't need to say, I want to be an independent woman. So although I don't have money, I have to buy a house and then I can get married. It's ridiculous. I don't think the ordinary people will consider this thing in that case. Yeah, so I think we don't need to put too much burden on ourselves just to be an independent woman. Yeah, it's a new kind of stereotype, I think.
I definitely think so. And I think like this whole idea or like stereotype about like every woman has to be like an independent woman. It's come from like the American and European cultures. Society here has become more about like the individual rather than communities, which I think society functions in a more like community-centric way from the places we're from. So half of my family is from Syria, and in a lot of Arab places or Middle East and like North Africa, it's very common for decisions to be made based on like the family and the community rather than just the individual. And I'm sure like in China, that's also more common compared to the way things work here in the West and in America, I think. when you mix that like individualistic way of life with feminism, that's where this idea that like a woman has to be independent comes from. So that's like my theory. And yeah, I think it can be quite like dangerous and damaging, because when you look at human nature, we're social creatures. Like we thrive when we work together, when we come together as families, as a community, as a society. So that's really important to like the way we've been created. And in Western culture, with this like individualistic idea that's going on these days, it's really like causing a lot of problems for people, like mental health problems, financial difficulties, a lot of different problems, because everybody thinks that they have to do everything on their own, and like you have to like leave home when you're 18 and just like survive the world by yourself and just depend on yourself and don't trust anybody. And that's causing a lot of damage, and especially for women, because I feel like as women, like friendships and community and family is even more important to us. And I think one way of knowing that is like we literally give birth, like we are the reason why society and lineages continue. I think it can become very harmful, this idea that every woman has to be this independent, strong woman. And I think it's fine if you want to be that way, like that's absolutely fine. I'm not saying that it's wrong, but I think it's wrong to force that idea and make it like, this is the standard, like every woman has to reach this standard. And if you don't reach the standard, you've failed. So I think that's the problem.
And make it as the only way to live. I don't think that's true.
Exactly.
I was thinking about that yesterday, and I think for human being, it's quite important to have the connection and interaction with others, because this is the essential of this Christian. I don't think we should black it. And in Chinese society, in terms of the stage of development, we have already set some role to protect the woman's rights. So in the road level, I have to say, in a lot of dimension, we have the similar right as men. I'm not saying same, just similar. For normal people, it's really difficult to interrupt the role. So what we can do is just to talk about the personal life on the internet. And when we talk about that, sometimes it's very extreme. I cannot summarize what the feminism is like in China, because I know it's quite diverse and everyone have their perspective. But if I have to give a certain keywords to it, I would say the first one is independent ladies, and the second one is that emphasize yourself but ignore the relationships with others, especially the intimate relationship. But I think that creates a lot of problem, because we need interaction with others, no matter in the family, on a working space, or with your partners. That's really important. You spend a lot of time with your partner, so it's really important for you guys to find a good way to cooperate with each other and get on with each other. But if you refuse to emphasize the importance of it, you just build a relationship with everyone at a very surface level. I don't think people can feel happy and feel the sense of belonging when they are talking about the romantic relationship. I just like, I'm not really understanding it. I'm thinking that, I'm a person who wants to get married, and I'm a person who really care about the deep relationship with others. So maybe I cannot be the feminist. I don't, this way of thinking is wrong, but that's how the feminism in China let me feel. So I think it, to some extent, it excludes the people from the outside place, and it cannot help the girls to unite it together to pursue the right they really want. They just divide people into different groups.
I can kind of relate to a lot of things you're saying, and I think actually we have the same problems here in the UK as well. What feminism means to them, you'll probably get a very different answer if you ask somebody else, and then somebody else, and then somebody else. Feminism is not anymore about like trying to be more like a man and trying to be at the top of the hierarchy, but it's more about women having the freedom and the choice to choose what they want. So when it's that definition or version of feminism, I do agree with that. But unfortunately, there is no like one agreed definition that everybody's following. So yeah, it's quite interesting that like such different parts of the world, women are experiencing the same like problems and ideas.
Maybe it's because that we are not the white, rich women. To some extent, we are not included at that part of women. So we will feel that something is not the truth. I really agree that purpose of feminism should be refined in nowadays society. For example, I think maybe the purpose of it should be to improve the living situation of women, and then we can have different solutions in different social background. I think the feminism should be combined with the specific social background and the specific need of that group of people. For example, the developed country or the country that really emphasize community, it will be different. Now my feeling is like we have already know that there is some discrimination in today's society, especially on the aspect of gender, but we don't know how to do. We don't know how to do besides being like a man, but that's not the things we really want. So that may be the problem.
I agree. I definitely think as well, like for different groups of individuals, like you said, like the solution will be different because there is different needs that need to be met. It's just making me think like it's so much more complex than a lot of feminists make it out to be, I think. Because like you said, it's always mainly like white rich women talking about the problem and the solution, and that's why our version of the problem is never discussed. You don't see solutions that are appropriate for people like us.
I watched a video yesterday. It's like a discussion between the female needs and the non-female needs. They share their experience to each other and see what's the differences between them. I noticed that maybe their standpoint are not really opposite. They just have different focus on different things. So maybe this kind of discussion should be more so that each part can understand the other part and they can see that maybe the ideas can be combined together, can be a more general idea to improve the situation of women.
I do think it's like a collective effort from everybody, and I think men as well have to be included in the conversation.
I think the male participation is really important. But seems like I didn't see any group did this successfully before. Most of the feminism organization only include the females, but there is no men because it's like an anti-man organization. If you are doing something but the other group are totally disagree, I don't think you can actually have a big success. If we consider the female has a weak position in this society, we must have the help of the other group. The development of the anti-racism also needs the cooperation of the white people. If no white people participate in it, they will not get success.
Yes, it's exactly the same. And it's the same for like my organization. Like we're advocating for Muslims and Muslim women, but if people who are not Muslim don't participate, it's not going to be productive or effective or successful.
Will you let men in?
Yeah, definitely. Like we also, when we do like community workshops and training and events, it's open to everybody, and that includes men as well. Because it's important to not make the other group feel excluded. You have to like be able to compromise and actually have a discussion. But if you start your work with being like anti like this group or anti men or whatever it is, then it's not really going to work. It's a bit pointless because if you're just going to attract more people who think like you, and then that's not really useful for anybody because the whole point is to attract people who don't think like you and to engage in discussion and see like, okay, what's the problem here? How do we work together to figure out the problem and the solution? In society these days, not many people do that. Like they just want to like campaign and protest about
what they believe.
And just attract more people that think like them, and that's it, and just like scream and shout. You're not actually making like the impact that needs to be made. You're not solving anything. You're just like angry. I understand that these issues, they affect us like on a very personal level, and they can be very difficult to cope with. And I understand like that it's very easy to get angry and frustrated. And, you know, that happens to me all the time. But you have to think, you have to be smarter when it comes to creating solutions, because if the only thing you're doing is just like gathering more people that think like you and share your anger and frustration, and you're not really doing anything useful with it,
Yes, I agree.
You're just going to be stuck in that cycle.
You must to figure out what you really want to do, what kind of problem you want to solve, not just show anger, show some emotional feeling.
Yeah. Like, that's okay sometimes for a little bit, but you have to think about like the bigger picture and the bigger problem and the bigger solution, and how can you create some change within this bigger picture and system.
Yeah, that can be the first step of the organization, but it shouldn't be the whole action of a... Yeah. So I'm quite curious about how the male participate in...
So we're a very like small team right now, because it's a very new organization, but the people that actually work and like lead the work that we do are all Muslim women. But when we put on like events to raise awareness and educate, we invite like all types of people. Everybody's welcome. And that obviously includes men. So I would say men are not like fully involved in what we decide to work on and do. For me, I'm still at the stage where like I'm figuring out how is the best way to do what I'm trying to do. So I'm very much open to like criticism and useful advice for different ways to engage different people and communities, and obviously that includes men in the work that we do. So I wouldn't say like we've completely decided to shut men out of the picture and just like, no, we're not listening to you. I focused this organization on Muslim women is because usually in my religion, when anything really is spoken about, it's always Muslim men speaking. And even when it's about the experiences of Muslim women, it's Muslim men speaking.
Yeah, we didn't hear too much voice from the women.
Yeah, so just like to balance that out, I've created an organization for Muslim women. And I think I will always make sure that it's Muslim women like at the top, but I think it wouldn't be very productive or effective or successful if we didn't include some advice and help from Muslim men as well. But it's just figuring out how is the right way to do that.
First, I consider that if you say it's an organization that help people to eliminate Islamophobia, and I think why it only includes women, because seems like this problem happening every Muslim, but now you say you want to give more opportunity for women to speak out. Now I can totally understand, because the man has already speak enough, so maybe it's the woman's turn to say something. But I know you have such confusion that whether it's right to just let the woman to be the sponsor, should the men to get involved more. But I think we are still on the way. The previous education men have some problem. So in most cases, I don't think this true gender can understand each other. So if we care about the efficiency of work, I don't think the mixed two groups together can really assess to success. But in the future work, I think we should also hear what the men consider about it. And as my channel, seems like the people I invited to talk with me are all women. But the fact is that I'm not willing to exclude them from my discussion. I just don't have too many relationship with them. So I don't know how to make them get involved. And I don't know what will be if we just share our opinions from very different perspectives. But in the future, I think we should do that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think also sometimes it's like it can be a little bit scary. It's a reason as well for me for why I've created an organization that is only women, because I just feel like it's easier and more comfortable and like safer. And yeah, unfortunately, I think some of that is because there is a lot of men out there who they're just not the best people.
Yeah.
Like they can sometimes be really, well, you just don't know what their intentions are. Not all men are like this. Well, it's definitely like a stereotype, I think, but unfortunately there is a lot of men who you can't really trust. Sometimes, but there is ways like, you know, technology, like meeting online, having like a virtual call or meeting is one option, which I think allows women to like feel more safe and comfortable.